Sara Storer has won 22 Golden Guitar Awards amongst many other accolades. Last year, she released her eighth studio album, the outstanding Worth Your Love. Shane Nicholson has won ARIA Awards and sadly only 18 Golden Guitars, just 18. And in addition to making his own wonderful albums, he produces others. Shane Howard is one of Australia's most esteemed musical artists. He founded the band Goanna in 1977, became a member of the Order of Australia in 2016 for his service to the performing arts, and is generally what might be referred to as a dead set legend. A show featuring just one of these artists would be a treat, and I can attest to that from personal experience. However, the three of them are uniting for a show called For the Sake of the Song, which is my pick for musical event of the year because of the riches it promises, which are untold. And to start, we have one Shane Nicholson, and Sara Storer, and we're hoping Shane Howard will join us at some stage. But hello, Sara. Hello, Shane.
Hello.
Hi, Sophie.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to talk to you both, and I have seen you both live. And Sarah, you only once live, Shane multiple times. In fact, I have literally lost count of how many times I've seen Shane live. So that's why I know from personal experience that having the two of you together, let alone Shane Howard along, will be just extraordinary. But I'm wondering whose idea it was.
It actually was mine originally. It was something I had bubbling away in the back of my head back in like COVID times, years and years ago. It was something I was thinking about, and I didn't really put much thought into it at the time as far as planning it because I was right in the process of releasing Living in Color and doing that tour and all of that. So it was just something that I knew would be cool one day. And then it just seemed like I felt really excited to do it after I finished the Living in Color touring and everything. I felt like I wanted to do something interesting, different before I did my next record. And I thought this is the perfect thing. And I couldn't go past the idea of the first one being done with, people that I knew would come to it with the right mindset, I guess. People that I knew and I'd worked with before, and I thought it's about a mixture of personalities as well as music. So it was I didn't have to put a lot of thought into the lineup for this one, and I wanted Sarah and Shane, and they both said yes. That's what I wanted it to be, and I'm just glad that everybody wanted to jump on board. But it's and it's become a bigger beast now, and that's sort of what I was hoping it will become, is this something that's greater than the sum of its parts.
And those parts are pretty extraordinary, as already stated by me at the start. Sarah, when Shane asked you about this, because you are a great collaborator, you collaborate with your brother, you collaborate with many other people over the course of your career. So I would imagine that you have no internal resistance to collaboration for something like this, but maybe you did. How did you feel when he asked you about it?
Oh, it can be quite nerve-wracking when if someone asks you to write a song or join their show because a lot of the time I don't think I'm up to scratch or, as a typical artist, you worry you're not good enough. And to be asked to be a part of this was something very special. It was quite gave me a bit of a confidence boost, you could say, to be a part of such a strong songwriting lineup, really. Yeah, so um, yeah, I was very humbled by it, really. So thanks, Shane. Thanks for asking me.
Thanks for saying yes.
Well, and Sarah,
Um,
it interests me so much that you say like the confidence boost because you are, as I said, you have 22 golden guitars. This is in part for your songwriting. You are such a phenomenal and lauded songwriter, whether it is on your own or in collaborations, I've said. And also, having seen you play live now, I know just how magical that experience is. So, yeah, I'm interested that for you, it's that fillip, I guess, to your self-confidence that Shane's request has given, because you're fantastic. Sorry to break it to you.
Yeah, she
oh,
is.
oh, thank you. Look, I, when I first started out in the industry, I spent many years, getting through those the challenges of trying to tell myself that I was worthy of being there, and it's only up until really late of late that I've really enjoyed performing and let everything go. Just stop worrying about everything. Ticket sales, whether your songs do this, do that. It really does come down to you as a songwriter and your songs. So to be a part of this show is something very special. And it also it does give you a little bit of confidence that behind the scenes, people because it can be a lonely job at times. That's what I'm going to say. It can be lonely where you feel like you're just sort of out on your own. And do people get your music? Do people listen to your songs? Do they actually? Because I love listening to new music, and you hear someone's got a new album out. It might take you a couple of weeks to finally play it, and you think, do people do that with my songs? Do they actually listen? So to be a part of this show and for Shane to um, acknowledge me as a songwriter and to put that in it and to have me on the first run is very exciting. Yeah.
And now, Shane, you mentioned about mindset as a criterion for your selection. So, was that mindset in terms of approach to songwriting, and or about forming this kind of trio of performers?
I think it's more about a general philosophy of artistry and the idea that people consider themselves. I really wanted people that I thought would consider themselves primarily a songwriter more than a music star. The
Right.
whole tour is the whole point of the show was to kind of highlight the song and the proverbial song and what goes into a song, maybe what's behind a song,
Mhm.
maybe a bit about the person who wrote the song. We don't hear that stuff in a normal show. And I thought it could be kind of interesting to put artists together that share a musical sensibility but aren't exactly, the same and sort of slightly cross genre boundaries there. I think, the Venn diagram of the audience will be interesting to look at because I think it would cross over in a lot of parts, but there would still be parts that would be, like separate. And I think that's kind of the point, that we can get to. Um, I just think it's about songwriting, and I really wanted people that could kind of happily distill their songs down. I mean, we do have a band playing with us, but essentially we're deconstructing our music down to the core elements and representing it, in that way. And I just wanted people that I think, would get that and feel comfortable doing that. And I just knew I've worked with Shane, I've worked with Sara. I'm fairly certain they've worked together on things before. I just thought there'd be a great mixture there, like we'd all get along. There's a psychology aspect too, if you're going to go on the road um, and it's not just about playing music, it's about kind of the personalities interacting on stage and becoming in making it a show.
Mhm.
So yeah, I always had in my mind that this would be an ongoing thing, and every time it went out, it would have three different artists on it, and but this first one I wanted to be a part of, and I wanted Shane and Sarah. That was my wish for this first run, and I got my wish. So
And yes, Shane, Howard, and Sarah had created a song together called Christmas in the Country. And even though the
that's right,
shows will
yeah.
not be taking place at Christmas time, I do tend to think Christmas songs can be perennial. So maybe it'll be on the set list.
We haven't thought, yeah, we've only had a one rehearsal, which was a sort of a very ad hoc rehearsal, just playing through a set list, a rough idea of a set list, and starting to put the bones of the show together. But it's a few weeks before we actually get in a room with the band and actually sing some songs. But it felt really good to sit down, all of us, and for the first time and talk our way through the set, play, sing a few songs, get some ideas going, that kind of. It felt like the process, even though there's a lot of organizing going on already
Mhm.
behind the scenes, it felt like the process had actually finally started, musically anyway. So it was nice to get that. We only did that this week, earlier this week. So it felt nice to have the ball rolling, I guess, musically. And I left that feeling much more excited about the tour than I even was before, because the music, having played some songs and hearing the other songs and hearing how everything's going to work together, it just made me kind of excited about it. So even more than I, originally was.
Well, I'm hearing you talk about it now. I'm even more excited than I was. So, Sarah, in approaching your set list for this, and the songs that you've chosen, or what is the structure of the show? Is it going to be that you're each doing some songs individually and then performing together, and the band's remaining on stage the whole time? Are you going to do anything acoustic, or are you still actually sorting that out?
Well, yeah, it's still in a state of flux, but we'll be playing together and separate and together, and then uh, acoustic and band. And yeah, the band will be there most of the time, but I think so we're still kind of settling on it, aren't we? So we haven't really we've got a set in mind for sure, but and I think it's a pretty cool set. I think if I could say that myself, I think I'd want to watch it if I was a fan, if I was a punter, I'd be pretty keen to watch this show and sit and judging on the set list, which we're not going to tell you what the set list is.
All right, nor should you. Look, I totally understand. So very happily we have Shane Howard with us. But Sarah, I do have a question for you before I talk to Shane H, and I'm going to say Shane H and Shane N in this as opposed
Yeah.
to last names. And it is about choosing songs because this is not your normal set that you're going to play. This is with a different band. You have other people on stage in the form of two Shanes. So in terms of the songs that you're thinking of choosing, yeah, has this shaped it somewhat?
It was difficult because, with all your albums, it's not your own show, so you haven't got a whole, hour or whatever to sing a number of songs that represent you in different parts of your life or different topics. So you're like, okay, how do I sum myself up in this show that represents me, but is a part of a show with the boys, as well as represent songwriting. So I sort of thought, well, I'd love to go right back and sing a couple of my early songs, as well as what I'm doing currently as well. So you get a mix of my old and new, and in the middle, really, and songs that have been a big part of my life for. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, every song you write, there's always a reason why you write it, and it always has a big story. Well, it does for me. I always have to have there's a reason why I write a song, and it ends up a big story. So I think maybe I was a little bit selfish this time round and chose songs that I love to sing.
Mhm.
They'll have a story, and we'll come across, I think, a little bit in the show will work well, I think. Yeah.
I think you're allowed to be selfish. That's your prerogative as the songwriter and as the singer. But Shane H, when Shane N contacted you about this show, did you immediately say yes, or did you have to think about it?
Um, no, it didn't take long at all. Sarah and I've done a little bit of work together in the past, and we wrote a song together many years ago. And Sarah frightened me when she told me how long ago that was, because time just evaporates. But and Shane N and I have never worked together, but I've been a distant admirer of his writing, his producing, the sounds he makes, what he does with that, all those bits and bones. And songwriters are always interesting because they always have what Leonard Cohen calls a kind of magical system for songwriting. And it's always really interesting to explore that with other writers. It is a magical process. Nothing exists, and then you make it so, and you gather bits out of the ether, and we gather the dust of other people's imagination and our own, and we do this process where we put it all in a pot, and sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years. and something comes out of that. And it is, and in the middle of all that is also the other, because at the end of the day, you're making it for the other,
Mhm.
for you're conscious of an audience, because it is that kind of an art form. So, we're musicians, but we're songwriters, and it's a really interesting process because we trade in people's imaginations and dreams, and then those songs become their embedded experience as well. So it's a you know, without turning into Freud, it's an interesting and fascinating process. So I like what Shane does. I like what Sara does. I like how the way that people turn words. What's the great line of Shane's about? A caught on a rusty nail. Like love caught on a rusty nail. They're just great images. And Sarah's talk, about under Darwin stars. It's the imagery, and they're Australian images. They're how we define ourselves, and we give we give our nation, our people, their dreams.
Yeah.
That's what we trade in. Yeah, so no, it wasn't hard to say yes.
There are so many different questions I want to ask each of you, so I'm just actually trying to work out where to go next. And I think I'll just actually pick up what you said about Sarah and imagery. And so there's often with Sarah, I think of the song Dust Kids, which she wrote and recorded with her brother Greg, and that's so evocative of rural life, as so many of your songs are, Sarah. And then Under Darwin Stars is this incredibly, and we spoke about it at the time, this song that really evokes Darwin as I've experienced it, not that I know it as well as you. And then Shane, and I know your catalogue so well, and there are so many different ways you actually will document experiences. And I think of like a song like Long Time Coming, which is one of my favorites of yours, which is
Wow.
this whole story in a song, these different, and this world that comes out of so few lines. And so I, as someone who loves music, and someone who actually works in words by day and uses a lot of words in book form, so admiring of the discipline and the skill and the craft to be able to create worlds in so few lines, really. So I guess this then goes to the experience of this show that you're putting together. And Shane, and I guess this is for you because it was your idea. Is the structure of it actually you're going to be taking particular songs and talking about them and talking about the history behind them, and as Sarah said, lots of stories behind all of her songs, and then performing them, or is it going to be more just performance of songs?
I think it'll be a bit of both, a bit of everything. And I guess we haven't kind of talked about having it completely, structured to the point where we know what's going to happen. And I mean, I'm a big believer in not having any shows worked out to the nth degree. I love every show being individual in some way. I'm sure every song we've got has a story. There'll be stories attached to all of the songs that we'll tell, and that is part of the point of the show. It's not just a performance of hits. It's supposed to be about getting inside the song and celebrating the power of the song. And you know, the idea stemmed originally, to put it in context, the idea came from when I wrote that Harvest on Vinyl song about Neil Young's Harvest for the Living in Color record, which I did when it turned 50 for the 50th anniversary of that record. And it got me thinking about how certain songs can be such an intrinsic part of like our history or the soundtrack of our lives, and or certain records. And um, I would love to know. I don't want to hear Neil Young tell me what that song's about, but I would love to hear him tell me where he was when he wrote it. You know, I'd love him to tell me where he was when he wrote it, or what he was thinking about, or how long was it a hard song to write, or I'd love to hear more about it. And that's kind of where the genesis of this whole thing came from, was from that. writing that song about my experience with Harvest, that record and how it shaped me and what it's meant to me over the years. And
Mm.
that's how this all came about. So I think, yeah, there'll be stories, obviously, and that's the point, that we get inside the songs a bit more than you would at a normal show. Um, but I also think we've all spent most of our lives on stage, and I think there's great magic that happens when you don't plan everything, you know.
Hmm.
If
Yeah.
you've got if everyone's got the experience and the history behind them to go up there and do a show like this, I think, there's going to be magic every night. So um, there's some things we probably don't need to talk about and work out before.
Yeah.
The main problem we're going to have is not playing a 4-hour show, with stories and songs.
I don't think that'd be a problem, though, for the audience. Now, the snippet of music we just heard was actually the song "Sometimes" by Tori Forsyth, which features a certain Shane Nicholson. So that was a very
Oh, that sounded
on-brand
familiar.
piece
Yeah.
of music. um, and Sarah, for you, like, I'm also interested in the logistics of this. So the shows at the moment are East Coast shows. We have New South Wales, Victoria, ACT. Sarah, of course, is from the Territory, so she is the one who's doing the heavy lifting here travel wise. So it sounds like you've done some in-person rehearsing. Sarah, how is this logistically working for you in order to be able to get to rehearse in person and then be home and then travel?
Oh, it's not a problem. Yeah, you just make it happen. Darwin is a long way away, but it's really 3 or 4 hours on a flight to major city, and so you are just around the corner. Sometimes it's a bit challenging, being away from your family, but sometimes it's nice being away from your family as well, having a bit of break, and of course working on music. Every time I leave, if I say I've got to go and do some work, got to go and do some gigs or something, Dave will go, "Oh, you're going on holiday again." So that's how he obviously sees the joy in me getting on that flight and making my way to make music, create music, talk about music, whatever it's to do. It's where I'm truly happy. So he sees that, and it's easy overall. Then, if your family are happy that you're going because they know you're happy, and I need a break every now and then, and music gives me that break. So I'm really looking forward to uh, this show coming together and being a part of it because. Oh, and like Shane said, we had our first little run, and there was something really special going on. Just running through all the songs, and yeah. So I can't wait to bring this to people. Mm.
And Shane H, for you, in terms of this year, had you planned other touring, and this is something you're fitting in, or did Shane N get in early with the request, so you've mapped your year around it?
Well, look, if I'm totally honest, it was a proof of concept thing. Like, let's do 3 shows and see how it goes. And 3 became 6, and I was actually on a completely different trajectory this year, and which is just will roll on, later on, in a very different pathway. We are working with Bart Willoughby and Jimbo Possum Burns and a whole Indigenous group. And but it was kind of fortuitous when Shane put the invitation forward, and it was an opportunity, like I said, to work with Sarah and to work with Shane. Those opportunities don't come along very often. I'm running out of steam. Like, my batteries are pretty low at my age, and so I saw it as a really unique opportunity to do something that I might not get the chance to do again. And like I said, working with other songwriters is always really, really special, because you get to share insights into each other's work. And like Sarah said, we came together only the last few days, the first run through. And when we finally all got in the one room together, and it is magic, it is a really beautiful. It's not always when you get together with people, but this was a really very special thing, a very intuitive group of people together, really listening to each other and complimenting each other's songs. I think it's going to be a very powerful show. in that sense, and a really unique show. Like I think we laughingly said we haven't done this before, hey, like the three of us. So it's it's a unique little thing, you know, that has just popped up out of the universe, and we'll follow the dust trail, see where it goes, you know.
Well, I love the sound of that. I'm so excited about it. Just talking from the time I heard about it, I just thought it was a brilliant idea, and now I find out it's Shane N's idea. So, Shane N, another question for you, which is you are one of the best connected and best regarded people and producers in music. So, I'm wondering how you put the band together. Like, who did you choose?
Oh, that was easy. I asked Shane who his favorite players were, and we got them.
I was expecting you to say, "Oh, I've got my friends," you know.
And they were available, and it kind of fell in our lap, really,
That
didn't
was
it?
the easy part. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm, yeah, they've played with Shane a lot, and we wanted Melbourne people, obviously, because Shane and I are Melbourne now, or I'm now Melbourne, and he's always been down here, and we wanted to make it just so that Sarah obviously has to do all the traveling, but um, we kept it with Melbourne people, and it seemed really obvious that to use people that Shane's worked with for ages that were proven. And I love working with new musicians. I work with new musicians all the time with the studio and producing. So I always take the chance to work with new people when I can. I'm definitely down for that. And that was, yeah, that was an easy one. It's actually a bit of there's been a long build up to this as far as working with Shane, because um, we haven't worked in that sense like performed together or anything like that like Sarah and I have. But many years ago, he and I both played on an outdoor show at Cable Beach in Broome,
Yeah.
um, with Troy Casadei. There was Shane and Troy and myself and Casey and the Pigram brothers, and we had this 3-day trip over there. It was beautiful. Um,
Including fishing.
that's what got me. Um, I mean, I was obviously grew up listening to Shane's music, but Shane and Troy and I went out fishing with the Pigram brothers one day over there in a boat, and it was just so magic. And I thought, I wanted, I just loved Shane's temperament, and that's what made me. I've held on to that for years, and that's why I knew that when going back to your first question, that's how I knew that this mix of personalities would work.
You know,
Came
a
from
really
that way back then.
something I remember about that fishing trip as well is right towards the end, Alan Pigram said, because the tides are big there and they move quickly, hey, it's like, and he's like, okay, pull in your lines, it's time to get out of here before we get caught by the tide, in the reef. And just as I was reeling in, hand line, I said, I think I've got something on the end. And as I reeled it in, there was a huge mud crab on the end of my line. And I thought, how am I going to get that in the boat? And just as I got it up to the boat, old Bill Chambers, he stuck his hand in the water and just flicked it into the boat.
That's right. There was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so amazing. Yeah, you bring that up because it's still a memory that's deeply embedded for me too.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and that's just stuck with me forever. That trip, and um, it just, yeah, I knew that this would work even from way back then. I just knowing Shane that small amount back then for a couple of days. I've just I knew that that would work in this environment. So coming full circle back to your first question, that's kind of, yeah, part and parcel. And then as far as Sarah goes, yeah, we've sung together over the years on and off, performed, you know, at the same events, that kind of thing. But she's actually been produced by Matt Fell a lot, who's one of my best friends. And I actually remember doing a bunch of stuff on one of her albums in my old house and learning songs for this tour. I'm listening and I'm going, that sounds like me playing that, or that sounds like my old lounge room. I reckon and there's things, little bits like that. It's been really interesting learning these songs. But it was actually not long ago. It was only last year. We played the Darwin Festival together, a show at the Darwin Festival, and we were hanging out backstage. And I had that thought that night. I was like, yeah, if I pull this show off next year, I've got to get Sara involved. Yeah, it was that night. Yeah.
Well, and Shane, and given that I know that you have played on some albums, or at least songs that Matt Fells produced, yes, not a surprise that you turned up on some of Sarah's, because I think you and Matt have actually played on each other's recordings as
That's
producers.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that so it's interesting to me hearing you all talking about it, because I think the through line here is actually trusting instincts, really. I think as artists, whether as songwriters or Shane, and for you putting this together, you had this sense that these two artists were going to be right, and they both said yes, and so it's like this is meant to be. But also just this sense that time actually doesn't really mean anything, if that makes sense. It's like you could have this idea years ago, and now it's come to fruition. It's almost like time has collapsed, and you're here where you're meant to be.
Yeah. Well, time doesn't mean anything with songs, does it? I mean, or it means everything. It's one or the other. I'm not sure. But songs last forever. I love that about them. And I love that this is a kind of a celebration of that in a way. We can play old songs and new songs, but it's about harvesting the stories that go with them, I guess, that a lot of people don't get to hear, you know. And like I said, deconstructing them, and that's just what we're doing, deconstructing these songs and building them again.
Yeah.
They're sort of new versions. It's not going to be what people have heard before with these songs, So it's a really, I'm excited that it's it's a very it's very much a one-off. Every show is going to, on this run is they're one-offs, and it's certainly not like anything else that I've been a part of or seen before. So it makes it exciting, I think. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I'm also intrigued at the idea of the three of you being in spaces together as songwriters and what may come of that, actually, potentially.
yeah.
As
Well,
in terms of songwriting.
at the moment we're only, what are we doing? Like 6 shows or something? But the it it's sort of the toe in the water. If we love it, we'll do more, I think, if it works out. It's just like one of those things. It's maybe we will, maybe we won't. We'll just you're right. It's just like it's fun, and it's a nice way to celebrate the craft of what we do, I think, which often, for me anyway, gets overshadowed when you're touring and the emphasis is more on a show, putting on a show. It's this is a real refreshing kind of way to put a show together. It's been really refreshing. It's felt kind of new, I guess, and inspiring.
Well, no, I've had you all talking for a while, and I do want to wrap it up, because at the time we're recording, it is quite late, getting quite late at night. And I feel like I could separately ask each of you many questions, but I will save it, because maybe we'll talk again down the track if you announce more dates. But as a fan of your music, incredibly excited about the show. As I said, individually, any one of you would be a treat, but this is really an extraordinary lineup. So I'm wishing you safe travels as you tour together. I hope everything goes smoothly. And Shane, and thanks for the idea, because as a fan, you've made my year. I think this is an incredible lineup.
Thanks, Sophie.
So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thanks, Sophie.